The air in the interrogation room was thick with the scent of stale coffee and unspoken accusations. Detective Miles Corbin leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering on the woman across the table. Her name, according to the flimsy ID sheet presented, was Sarah Jenkins. Her clothes were nondescript, faded jeans, a plain gray hoodie, and worn combat boots. But it wasn't her attire that had landed her here. It was the tattoo, a trident. Not just any trident, but the special warfare insignia, the coveted symbol of a U.S. Navy SEAL. It was inked with stark precision on her right forearm, just below the sleeve of her hoodie. And it was that tattoo, combined with a tip from a disgruntled former acquaintance, that had brought her to this uncomfortable chair in the bowels of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS field office. "Ms. Jenkins," Corbin began, his voice a low, even rumble. "We have reason to believe you've been misrepresenting yourself, specifically as a Navy SEAL." Sarah's eyes, a striking shade of hazel, met his without flinching. There was a weariness in them, a deep-seated fatigue that went beyond a sleepless night, but no fear. "And what reason would that be, Detective?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, yet it carried an unexpected steel. Corbin gestured at her arm. "That tattoo, it's a protected symbol. Only authorized personnel are permitted to wear it. And as far as our records show, there's no female Navy SEAL named Sarah Jenkins. In fact, there are no female Navy SEALs, period." A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through Sarah's jaw. "Is that so?" "It is," Corbin affirmed, leaning forward. "Look, Ms. Jenkins, we understand. People get caught up. They want to feel important. They see movies, read books. But impersonating a SEAL, especially with a fraudulent tattoo, is a serious offense. It dishonors those who have truly earned that trident. We can make this easy. Just admit it. Tell us where you got the tattoo, and we can sort this out." Sarah remained silent, her gaze drifting to a point beyond Corbin's shoulder, as if seeing something he couldn't. Her hands, resting on the table, were calloused, the nails short and clean. There were faint, almost faded scars on her knuckles, the kind that spoke of hard work or harder fights. "We have a witness, Ms. Jenkins," Corbin pressed, trying a different tack. "Someone who claims you've been telling stories, boasting about your time in the teams, that you've been using this tattoo to gain favors, perhaps even financial gain." A flicker of something, not anger, but a deep, cold disdain, crossed Sarah's face. "A witness? Who?" Corbin hesitated. "That's classified for now, but suffice it to say, their account is compelling." "Compelling," Sarah repeated, a ghost of a bitter smile playing on her lips. "I see." The interrogation continued for another hour, a slow, grinding dance of questions and evasions. Sarah didn't deny having the tattoo, nor did she admit to being a SEAL. She simply deflected, her answers precise but unrevealing. She spoke of personal experiences and things she couldn't discuss. Her composure was unnerving. Most people, when faced with the threat of federal charges, crumbled. Sarah Jenkins was a rock. Corbin was starting to get frustrated. He'd seen his share of posers, but none with this level of conviction. The tattoo itself looked authentic, too. The lines were clean, the shading subtle. Not the cheap, faded ink of a backyard job. He'd even had a petty officer, a former Navy diver, examine it. The diver had said it was damn good work, almost too good for a fake. "All right, Ms. Jenkins," Corbin finally said, pushing back his chair. "We're going to have to hold you. We'll bring in a tattoo expert to verify the authenticity, and then we'll proceed with charges for impersonation and possibly fraud." As he stood to leave, the door to the interrogation room opened, and a figure entered. He was an older man, his uniform crisp with the weight of rank, a 4-star admiral. His face was stern, his eyes sharp and intelligent, taking in the scene with a single, sweeping glance. Corbin snapped to attention. "Admiral Hayes, sir. I wasn't expecting you." Admiral Hayes nodded curtly, his gaze fixed on Sarah. He walked slowly around the table, his eyes never leaving her face. Sarah, for the first time, showed a hint of something other than weariness. A flicker of recognition, perhaps, or surprise. The Admiral stopped beside Sarah, his gaze dropping to her forearm, to the trident tattoo. He leaned in, his voice a low murmur, barely audible above the hum of the ventilation. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice laced with a profound, almost reverent awe. "That tattoo's real." The words hung in the air, shattering the carefully constructed reality of the interrogation room. Corbin stared, dumbfounded. The petty officer who had been observing from behind the one-way glass gasped. Admiral Hayes straightened up, his eyes still on Sarah, a complex mixture of respect, sorrow, and something akin to pride etched on his face. He then turned to Corbin, his voice now firm and resonant, cutting through the stunned silence. "Detective Corbin," the Admiral said, his voice leaving no room for argument, "release Ms. Jenkins immediately, and erase all records of this interrogation. This never happened." Corbin, a seasoned investigator, was reeling. "Sir, with all due respect, what are you talking about? There are no female SEALs. This woman is impersonating—" "Silence, Detective." Admiral Hayes's voice cracked like a whip. "You are out of your depth. You are to follow my orders without question, now." The authority in his voice was absolute. Corbin, though bewildered, knew better than to argue with a four-star admiral. He nodded, his mind racing, trying to comprehend the impossible. Admiral Hayes then turned back to Sarah, a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, are you all right?" Sarah finally spoke, her voice still quiet, but with a newfound tremor. "Admiral, I didn't think anyone remembered." "Remembered?" Hayes scoffed, a sad smile on his face. "How could we forget? You're a legend, Sarah. A ghost, perhaps, but a legend nonetheless." He then looked at Corbin, his gaze hardening. "Detective, Ms. Jenkins is not impersonating a SEAL. She is a SEAL, or rather, she was a SEAL. The first and the last." Corbin's jaw dropped. The first? The last? What in God's name was going on? The story that unfolded was one of the most closely guarded secrets in U.S. military history, a tale of unparalleled courage, sacrifice, and a mission so black it had been erased from every official record. Admiral Hayes led Sarah and a still-stunned Corbin to a secure conference room. He ordered coffee, real coffee, and then began to speak, his voice low and grave, painting a picture of a time when the rules were different, when the stakes were unimaginably high. "It was 2003, Admiral Hayes began, his gaze distant, lost in the past. "The war in Afghanistan was escalating. We were facing a new kind of enemy, one that operated in the shadows, using unconventional tactics. We needed a new kind of warrior, someone who could blend in, someone who could go where no man could, someone who could bypass conventional intelligence gathering." He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. "That's where Sarah came in. Sarah Jenkins wasn't just a recruit. She was a prodigy, a natural linguist, fluent in Pashto and Dari, a master of disguise, a ghost. And she had a unique background. Raised in a remote village in Afghanistan by missionary parents until she was a teenager. She knew the culture, the customs, the nuances that no Western operative could ever truly grasp." Corbin listened, mesmerized. This wasn't just a story, it was history unfolding before him. "The program was called Project Chimera," Hayes continued, his voice heavy. "It was top secret, compartmentalized beyond anything you can imagine. The idea was radical. Insert a female operative deep behind enemy lines to gather intelligence on high-value targets. A woman because in that culture, women are often invisible to men, able to move through spaces, gather information, and go unnoticed in ways a male operative never could." "But a SEAL?" Corbin interjected, still struggling with the concept. Not a conventional SEAL, no, Hayes admitted. But she underwent the training, every single brutal, unforgiving moment of it. Bud S, SQT, the whole 9 yards. She trained alongside men, pushed herself beyond every conceivable limit. She proved herself in every aspect: physical endurance, tactical proficiency, mental fortitude. She earned that trident, detective, every single bit of it. She was faster, stronger, and more resilient than half the men who went through that program. Sarah sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the table, her expression unreadable. Her official designation was Special Operations Asset, Category Alpha 7, Hayes explained. No rank, no official unit designation, just a number. Her existence was deniable. If she was caught, she was a rogue operative, a civilian. There would be no rescue, no recognition. She was a ghost, and ghosts don't leave footprints. Her mission, Hayes continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, was to infiltrate a specific network in the Hindu Kush Mountains, a network responsible for funding and orchestrating attacks against our forces. She spent 18 months there, 18 months alone, in hostile territory, living among the enemy, gathering intelligence that was critical to our operations. She saved countless lives, detective. Countless. Corbin felt a chill run down his spine. 18 months, alone. The sheer audacity, the unimaginable courage it would take. She provided us with intel that led to the disruption of several major terror plots, Hayes said, his voice filled with a quiet pride. She identified key leaders, supply routes, communication networks. She was our eyes and ears in a world we couldn't penetrate. She was the best we ever had. So why isn't she recognized? Corbin asked, the unfairness of it all hitting him. Admiral Hayes sighed, a deep, weary sound. When the mission was complete and she was extracted, the program was immediately terminated. The political climate shifted. The idea of female operatives in such a high-risk, unconventional role became problematic. The official narrative was that women were not suitable for combat roles, especially not in special operations. To acknowledge Sarah's existence, to acknowledge her success, would have challenged that narrative. It would have opened a Pandora's box of questions and debates that the military at that time was not prepared to handle. So they erased her, Sarah said, her voice flat, finally breaking her silence. They took my service, my sacrifice, and they buried it. Not erased, Sarah, Hayes corrected gently. Classified, declassified, hidden, but never forgotten by those who knew, by those who depended on your courage. The tattoo, Corbin said, looking at Sarah's arm with new eyes. How did she get it? It was given to her, Hayes explained, by the commanding officer of SEAL Team 6, personally, after her return. A private ceremony, a recognition of her unparalleled bravery and skill. It was a symbol of her earning, even if the world couldn't know it. And the witness? Sarah asked, her eyes narrowing. Admiral Hayes's expression hardened. The witness is a man named David Miller. He was a junior intelligence analyst on the periphery of Project Chimera. He had access to some fragmented, unclassified reports, enough to know something was happening, but never the full picture. He was dismissed from service for insubordination and a general lack of discretion. He's been trying to expose government conspiracies ever since. He probably saw your tattoo, put 2 and 2 together, and decided to expose what he thought was a fraud. He thought he was exposing a fake, Corbin murmured, the irony bitter in his mouth. Instead, he was exposing a hero. Precisely, Hayes said. And that's why this stays under wraps, detective. Sarah's identity, her service, it remains classified. For her protection, and for the integrity of the program, even if it no longer exists. She lived in the shadows then, and she must continue to live in them now. It's a heavy burden, but it's the one she carries. Corbin spent the next few hours in a state of bewildered awe. He erased the records, shredded the reports, and ensured that Sarah Jenkins' name was scrubbed from the day's events. He watched as Admiral Hayes personally escorted Sarah out of the NCIS office, a quiet, almost familial bond between them. As they walked down the hallway, Sarah paused, turning to Corbin. "Thank you, Detective," she said, her voice soft, "for understanding." Corbin just nodded, still processing. "Miss Jenkins, thank you for your service." Sarah gave him a faint, weary smile, and then she was gone, disappearing into the bustling city, a ghost once more. The incident haunted Corbin. He couldn't speak of it, couldn't even hint at it, but it changed him. It gave him a new perspective on the sacrifices made in the shadows, on the unsung heroes whose stories would never be told. He looked at every veteran with a newfound respect, wondering what hidden battles they had fought, what classified triumphs they had achieved. Sarah Jenkins, meanwhile, returned to her quiet life. She worked as a freelance security consultant, her skills invaluable to a select few who understood the depth of her experience, even if they didn't know the full truth. She lived with the weight of her secret, the knowledge that her greatest achievements would forever remain unacknowledged by the world. Sometimes, late at night, she would look at the trident on her arm. It was more than just ink. It was a testament to the impossible, a silent scream of defiance against a world that refused to see her. It was the mark of a warrior, forged in the fires of a secret war, a warrior who had broken every barrier, shattered every expectation, and emerged victorious, even if her victory was known only to a select few. The world might never know about Project Chimera or the first female SEAL. But in the quiet corners of the intelligence community, among the few who held the highest clearances, the legend of Sarah Jenkins persisted. A whisper of a ghost, a shadow of a warrior whose tattoo was a silent, undeniable proof of a truth too profound, too revolutionary for the world to comprehend. And sometimes, when a young, cocky operative would boast about their training, or a politician would grandstand about the limitations of women in combat, Admiral Hayes would remember Sarah. He would remember the intelligence she provided, the lives she saved, the impossible feats she achieved. And he would remember the quiet dignity with which she carried her secret, the burden of being a hero no one could acknowledge. He knew the truth. He had seen the tattoo, and he had whispered the words that changed everything. That tattoo's real. A whisper that carried the weight of a hidden war, a forgotten hero, and a truth that, one day, might finally be ready to be told. Until then, Sarah Jenkins remained a ghost, a legend, and the first and only female Navy SEAL, her trident a silent testament to her extraordinary legacy.